Alrighty then. Hello everybody. This is the world of AJP here. I am here with Shulgi, and today we're going to be talking about a special little niche series that probably not a lot of you heard about. Probably some of you have if you're really into the whole Reddit schema and everything like that, like a fucking nerd you are. But we're here to talk about the Axe of Caine series, one of Shulgi's favorite things ever, and one of my least favorite things ever. However, it's a quite an interesting literary work, and we're going to be discussing pretty much everything we can about Stover, about his works, about his legacy, about what we think Caine really means in the grand scheme of things, and overall just our own opinions about it. So, just to go ahead and start off, I would love to have my good friend and good associate Shulgi discuss why he loves this series and what makes it such a great thing, and then I'll discuss why I hate it.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm the returning co-host Shulgi. I am infamous and well known, so I don't really think I need any sort of introduction, especially for the people who probably will be watching this. So, as AJP said, Acts of Cain is, I'm not sure it is still my favorite thing, but it is definitely among the top the top rankings, the Mount Rushmore of fiction. One of them would definitely be Acts of Cain. Shulgi's personal Mount Rushmore, of course. I am not exactly sure how I found it, how I stumbled upon it, but one of the main reasons I personally enjoy the work so much is because it satisfies many of my personal tastes, many of what I want to see in fiction. I grew up not reading the usual fantasy schmucks. I have never touched Tolkien. I have never really dabbled much into Sanderson because I can't stand him. So my introduction to fantasy was actually Sword and Sorcery. And other than Sword and Sorcery, I read also pretty early on Gormenghast. So my fantasy education, my fantasy upbringing has been kind of queer. And I think Acts of Cain presents a very interesting mix of both sword and sorcery and weird fiction, especially the latter books, especially the last book, which is weird as fuck. And I just ticks a lot of my preferences. I really like violence. I really like uh, ridiculous megalomaniac characters. I really like sassy, cocky, cheesy characters, and those and the main two characters, Cain and Marocot, are basically a megalomaniacal demigod and a cocky, sassy, Conan-like hero. So it immediately clicks to my taste. And also, I firmly believe that Stover himself is a fantastic writer. He has a great narrative voice, not only a great narrative voice as a narrator, but he is perfectly able and quite proficient in developing separate character voices for pretty much all the main characters, which are extremely distinct. I've rarely seen such mastery of narrative polyphony. Maybe the only other author I can think of that has such diverse character voices is Mervyn Peake with Gormenghast, which is again another reason that I consider Acts of Cain to be sort of a mixture of weird fiction and sort of sorcery. And also later on, it has very weird non-linear plots. It includes time travel. It includes weird metaphysics, philosophy, deep character interactions, character development, some really well done character arcs, some really well done plot arcs. So it basically clicks with everything I enjoy in fiction. So it's a perfect match, Shulgi and Cain. However, as there never have existed perfection in this world, never have existed perfect things, I believe that this book has both extreme merits and extreme flaws. And as AJP has shown with his virulent hatred for the series, we'll have a very interesting discussion. I hope.
Alrighty, that's beautifully said from good old Shogi. And yeah, I actually did have this series up in my top 10, top 20 when I finished Heroes Die, which is the first book of the series, which I think despite the flaws that have been pointed out to me, is still one of like the most readable books ever. I know that's a weird thing to say. Like, how can you hate a book and still say it's very readable? Stover is a fucking fantastic, amazing plot mover. He knows how to pace a plot. He knows how to keep it going, keep you interested, keep you focused on what's going on without wasting time. And he delivers information like that, like that, like that, like that. Here's the characters. Here's how the world building works. Here's how the functions of the layout is, which I think is like compared to a lot of other fantasy authors, which love to like drag out their worlds, like Sanderson does. Silver really does stand out from how much he's able to communicate so much information, both subtly, unsubtly, expositorial. It's a very interesting dynamic and mix, and it's a very beautifully constructed narrative arcs that I think continues and persists even up until the end of the series. He's a quick-witted and very fast plot mover, and honestly, I would say this is indicative of the characters themselves because they're very much active participants in what they're doing and how they're acting and how they're behaving and everything like that. Because with how do I say this? With other Stover heroes like Kratos, like when he was doing the God of War novels and everything like that, or when he was doing the Iron Dawn series or whatever it's called, I can't remember. Jericho Moon. Jericho Moon. That's the name of it. That's the name of the
Yeah,
series.
and Iron Dawn is, I believe, the second book. I'm
Yeah,
not sure what the series is called.
yeah, I think it's called Jericho Moon. But with that series, it's a lot more slow and methodical because the characters themselves are more slow and methodical. Whereas with Caine, the characters are very active. They have to very much keep up with their performance. They have to be very hypened. They have to be very strong willed, very active in their performances. And it's very well done. I actually appreciate that about that. How the nature of the characters are intertwined with the narrative itself. Which we'll get into with. Honestly, I would definitely agree with Shogi here on probably the best book, Blade of Tai Shell, because Blade of Tai Shell has, I think, some of the best character writing and character integration of prose I think I've seen in a good bit, especially regarding from a metafictional narrative point of view. However, where I will say is the issues with Caine is I would say it's characters themselves. Shogi loves the characters. I hate them, a lot of them, because I feel like Stover doesn't is too laden with his cheesiness and to a certain extent. Like it's not really self-aware enough to where it warrants this level of like badassery that he thinks he's showing off, or some of the characters being hypocrites, not really being called out for it, or just like overall characterization just being kind of despondent, which is weird because there's some great characters here, like Malekov. Malekov is the best fucking character in the series. I do not have any. There's nothing wrong with him. He's perfect. I love him. um,
Who doesn't?
yeah, who doesn't? Who doesn't love Malekov? He's fucking amazing. The only folly I would say of Caine for a lot of its time is some of its plotting not making a little bit of sense when towards the end quarter of the books, but that's just Stover being Stover. The character writing being kind of messy a lot of the time, like a lot of them being too perfunctory and being too open with their nature, as well as just actions that don't correspond with how the character should be acting. Like especially with Caine, the whole Caine and Hari personality shift and dynamic is a very interesting thing. However, and it deals with the Jungian elements of the series that are very much exacerbated. But I've always felt like Caine is a character that is either gonna make it or break it for you because his one-liners are some of the cheesiest shit you'll ever read. However, if you're like me and if you thought this book was supposed to be a parody of like 90s macho toxic masculine type of series, you'll probably enjoy it. If you realize that Stover is taking it seriously and thinks it is badass, which he does, then yeah. And it also doesn't really help that I noticed that really I feel Caine itself is a self-insert for Stover, especially considering the fact he went through a divorce around this time period that he was writing Caine and everything that's going on there. But that's just me being, a petty asshole because I have my follies with this series. But overall, it's I would still say it's literary fantasy. It's even potentially a literary work, like along the lines of Conan the Barbarian and Solomon Kane. Very Howardian with how it's structured and done. Any
I mean, come on, you can just tell me you don't like the one-liners when one of the main high points for me are exactly the one-liners because some of them are actual fucking gold, and of course, others are kind of cheesy bullshit. But I think that a sort of fits well into the series, which is for me a weird mix of both cheesy bullshit and nonsense, cool, awesome bullshit, which makes it great for Shulgi because Shulgi likes both cheesy cringe shit and awesome cool nonsense shit. But also the books are much more than this. They attempt to do a lot of great things. These great things are very much appealing to me. But whether or not Stover actually manages to pull them off to succeed in accomplishing these great things is another issue entirely. I admire the goal. I admire the I admire the massive stone balls it takes to attempt something like Caine's Law, but you know, nobody nobody is a writing god. Nobody actually can write what he intends to do with perfect clarity. So we can both discuss probably each book separately because they are very different books. Sauer is also very good at writing very different books, and also because they each tackle a very specific conglomeration of themes by themselves. There, I almost don't even consider the series a proper series. It's more like a linked chain of very long short stories. So we can also probably discuss this. But yes, as I said, Stoller really attempts. Like you can see how passionate he is just by the narrative voice itself. He attempts something unique, something that I don't think I've seen before or since. But I'm not really much as well read as AJP is or ever will be. But he really does something that I don't think anyone else has done, and it's something that's very difficult to accomplish. And I respect just the attempt. I also think a lot of the things Stover has set to accomplish in these books, he has accomplished phenomenally. Like some of the most jaw-dropping shit you'll see in the entire genre, maybe even in literature. But also some things I especially agree with you on the point that Caine is an obvious self-insert. I'm That's also one of my criticisms because there's this moment in the books where Caine finds out that somebody on other world has learned how to make scotch, and he's very happy because scotch is his favorite drink. Well, guess what? Matthew Stover's favorite drink is it's fucking scotch. So yeah, Caine is a very obvious self-insert, but Caine is also such a fun character, both fun and entertaining and annoying, that complex enough to justify the existence of 4 books devoted to him. So I can sort of I can sk- I can ignore this. It's not as much of an issue for me, but it's definitely an issue. Mostly because I really hate self-inserts. Unless you insert you yourself, the author, unless you put yourself in the book as a character, which I really like. That's one of my favorite stupid cliches that happen in fiction now. But unless you do this, self-inserts are kind of just why would you insert a character that's you and not just insert yourself? I think I would have been more interested in since the 4 book gets secretly metafictional. I would have been more interested in something like Stephen King did in Dark Tower happen in the last book than just
yeah,
having a self insert. But that's just personal taste.
yeah. I was actually going to bring that up because there's actually a certain interesting metafictional congeniality with Dark Tower and Caine itself, with mainly the fact that the authors are self inserts and everything, but it gets very metafictional with how it's structures and everything like that. And you can really feel like that maybe was an attempt with Caine towards the end, like especially with how it perceived time and that final monologue from Caine himself, like sort of speaking even to like the audience directly, us the readers. about how we're forcing him into these situations by reading on and on and on, and how no matter what, he's going to be the one defending his friends, his family, everyone he cares about, and everything like that. And he, oh my god, like this is actually something I think is a really good catharsis point. It's like it's Caine embracing his persona as the character of Caine while still being Hari, and that's one of the beautiful things. Like it's that whole Jungian embracing the mask, the shadow, and the ego at all three corners layers. He's embracing his darker inner self, his trauma. He's embracing his caring human self, and he's recognizing the fact that like Caine is him, whether no matter how much he wants to like break that down or deconstruct it. Which is one of the major things about Bladed Shell, which I think is really interesting, is that that whole book is about duality. It's about the other different personas and our layers and our cultures and how we define ourselves and how we evolve. But that's getting ahead of the conversation. I want to go ahead and move along to the first book of Acts of Caine. And unfortunately, I don't have a copy in front of me. I only have digital copies because I had everything destroyed by cops. So
I have a Bulgarian copy, if that will do.
Yeah. Fuck the police. Which is funny because there's a social. What were they called? The social force or the social?
The soapies. The soapies. I think it is the social police. Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck the soapies. Fucking fascists.
Yeah. Fucking gay ass subhumans.
So Heroes Die is a pretty is probably the most traditional out of all the three Caine books so far. Well, all four. I'm talking about this one here is separate, but it's very interesting comparing this to like last quarter Caine because it's very traditional. It's very like normally structured with some pretty interesting and weird elements already involved with it. However, what I already have an interest is the splitting of the first person and the third person point of views. Now, Shulgi, I've always wanted to hear your thoughts on this. Why did you think it was Silver decided to have Caine be in first person and Hari be in third person when it came to him, and having that sort of like be minced up as the story goes along, which Hari becomes kind of first person more and more and more? Like, why would you say that is? Would you say it's more symbolic of Caine's own infusion with his personality or alter ego, or would you say it's just an interesting little fun thing to do with the devices there? Because it does add some good flow narratively.
Okay, so I actually think this is one of the most interesting aspects of Heroes Die. Now, I did tell you before we started this that I don't exactly remember much from Heroes Die, just because I read it a while ago, and I reread it again a while ago. So my memory is a bit fuzzy. But I consider it my least favorite book of the series, exactly because it's the most traditional. So it's usually the most I've seen this before type of book. But even in the most traditional book of the series, even in the most basic point A to point B to point C, quite literally a time scale, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 type of book, Star still does this interesting thing about dividing the narrative voice in two separate, because they really are two separate personalities. One being Caine, which goes with the first person, and the other being, of course, Harry Michelson, which goes the third. I'm not exactly sure why one is the third and the other is the first. I believe that's sort of an intuitive stylistic choice. But if you ask me when I'm in a more schizophrenic mood, I'd say that one of the main features of Caine's character arc as the books progress is that we start with the assumption, or at least with Harry's own assumption, that Harry is the real person. He's the depth of the ocean, and Caine is just a mask. He's the surface that he puts in order to entertain. But as the books progress, and obviously spoilers, as the books progress, Caine more and more obviously becomes it becomes apparent that he is the actual personality and that Harry Michelson is the mask. And so maybe if you dare to be as schizophrenic as me, the first person, which also has a very interesting metafictional justification, since actors speak their mind so that the viewers on Earth can listen to them. But other than this being the in-world metafictional reason for first person, I believe it also foreshadows very early on that actually the real I of Caine's personality is Caine himself, and Harry, who goes by third person, which is usually more distant, more elevated outside the character. It shows that Harry is really just a device, a mask, a tool that Caine uses to protect himself on Earth. Because the shit Caine does on other world isn't going to slide through in on Earth, obviously, because of the stupid ass fucking dystopia that's going on Earth, which we are getting closer and closer by each day. But I also wanted to say, just to disjoint the conversation a bit, to go back further. One of the points you brought up about very very cathartic moment on in the series, that Caine accepts who he is. I think one of the biggest praises I'm going to say about this series, in eternity, like forever, is that I think these books are the greatest apotheosis of Nietzsche's affirmation of life and eternal return of the same. I've never seen attempted in actual fiction to explore Nietzsche's idea of becoming what you are meant to be what you are. This very heroic optimism of Nietzsche's affirmation of bringing with himself into every abyss the power of his yes to life. I think that these books are usually portrayed as being nihilistic, as being grimdark, as being showcasing how pointless everything is. And yes, by showcasing how pointless it is, it actually pulls the Nietzsche trick on you. This is without a doubt the greatest praise I'm going to give these books, because I'm a Nietzsche fanboy. So just so you know, these books are undoubtedly to me Nietzschean at their core. But yeah, hope this helps for why I like these books further.
And yeah, that's a beautiful thing. That's one of the things about Caine as well that's very interesting, is it's very steeped in philosophy, and not just like the normal, German Enlightenment type of, or even Dark Enlightenment philosophy, but instead of pretty much even the ancient Greeks and a lot of the Dialectical type of philosophy when it came to arts and direction. And it's actually an interesting play on the whole thing about the actor losing himself in the persona, because back then in the Greeks times, a lot of Greeks, Romans, they hated actors. They just thought they were demons and everything like that. And I find it interesting with Mayakov how he could symbolize that, but to not get too far off with the symbolism and everything like that. The overall plot structure of this is mainly the fact that Caine is sent on a mission to wreak havoc a little bit during what is called, I think, called the Great Plains War, I think, because there's a civil war going on essentially after his first assassination
Yeah,
attempt.
which basically starts because Caine murders the previous king, and I think that happens in the prologue as well.
Yeah, and you get that mention as well that the heir, who was like this 9-year-old girl, gets murdered as well, and that's like a passing line a little bit, but you can tell Caine's kind of fucked up about that a little bit. Like he doesn't like that happens, that a little girl got caught up and everything like that. And you can honestly say that potentially for book two, this kind of leads towards his need and intensity to sort of take care of you know who. Um, well, why am I doing non spoilers? This is all fucking spoilers. Who the fuck cares? Faith. His intense draw to Faith, because it's his chance to kind of like really redeem himself in his eyes, essentially. And that's another interesting faculty of Caine's character that I think is that constant need for redemption, essentially, but him having to only self actualize when he confronts himself in a way that's healthy, essentially, because a lot of that book of Blade Tyshell is breaking down Caine. A lot of the for book one is doing the same thing. It's breaking down the Caine and the Hari personas. At first, we think it's traditional, like you said, but it's mainly focused on his major focus on that persona, and that's wonderfully contrasted with Kohlberg and my fucking boy Malkoff, who was this pathetic, weak little necromancer that became this ultra god Chad made of gold and long, wavy, flowing hair. The ultimate Chad of a character.
The ultimate wife material, literally.
Yeah, he's so fucking cool. And the beauty of Caine and their chemistry together and their duality is so fucking good. Just the way that Milkoff represents so much of like that inner acceptance and that recognition and not really like losing himself in the persona, but he is that persona. Whereas Caine is suffering with so much inner conflict and frustration and annoyance. He's cucked, like literally he's a cuckold. Like his fucking wife is cheating on him and everything like that. With the worst character in the series, Lamorak, who no one fucking likes. I say he's the worst fucking character in the series, like far none.
I genuinely forget he exists every time until he's mentioned sometimes, and I then struggle to remember who the fuck was Lamorak, and then I remember actually the better character who is his mother, and via his mother I actually remember what Lamorak did in Heroes Die, but I always forget. He's just forgettable.
He is a very forgettable character, and the worst part is he's plot important, and for some reason, Caine has to save him as well because of the whole like, oh, these are the rules. What's the what was it called? The bog, the board of organizational something like that. The bog. They're in charge of
But
all
the
the.
board of governors.
Yeah, those guys. They have a lot of sway. They have a lot of power. Caine knows that he's related, that Lamrak's related to them, and he can't really like fuck this up, or else he's gonna get screwed over pretty badly when he gets back on Earth. Because he's already fucking up with Kolberg, and he's already losing a lot of his political sway with Marco Vilo, his buddy, his bizman, and everything like that. And that's one of the interesting things as well is you can tell Caine's on a self-destructive path right now because he's joining Milkoff, he's messing up with the plot with the movie, and we're finding out as well that he's on this whole other type of fucking thing with Shauna and everything that's going on with his marriage failing and him feeling inadequate a little bit and frustrated and sad, and those flashbacks entering his mind over and over and over and over and over again. They're a bit cheesy and they're a bit cliche and everything like that. The flashbacks, I would say, and I feel like it would have been better just to have them talking in front of person. But it's again, it helps move along the plot, and the pacing. You know, it's no time wasted at all.
Yeah, actually, I believe for being allegedly such an important factor for all the developments of the further books, the relationship between Harry and Shanna is never really properly developed, in my opinion. Even even I think in Blade of the Shell, when it should have been developed, it just sort of isn't. We have this time skip, and even with the time skip, we never get any sort of flashback. I hate the word flashbacks, but we don't get any callbacks to like what was like for them to live for these 6 years, or what was like their relationship. We just get an information from Caine of all people, who is unreliable, that it would they've just been arguing forever. They've been arguing when they met, they've been arguing when they married, and they're arguing now. But then why are you saving her? I don't know. It's just I don't think it's a properly developed dynamic between these two. But it also, again, as always with Stover, he never he doesn't always succeed, but he always attempts something interesting. I think potentially the relationship between Shanna and Caine or Harry would have been great, if Shanna wasn't a fucking terrible character, and if it was actually developed proper.
Fuck it. Oh my god. You fucking yes. Okay, I'm gonna be perfectly frank. This is the thing I was talking about characters being hypocrites and not being called out. Shauna is such a clear fucking self-insert for Stover's ex-wife, and it's because of that like she's like the most perfect fucking thing ever.
Wait, really?
Yes, she's the fucking self-insert for her.
That's kind of sad.
I know. Why do you think she just gets so fucking protected throughout the fucking book? She never does anything wrong. Caine calls her like a true hero. like the story does everything it can to make her look cool and badass, and Caine like the fuck up. It's such a cucked mentality of like, oh, I love you so much and everything like that. I want you to come back, and they do come back. Yeah, and the guy who you cheated on me with, he's dead. He was a piece of shit. Anyways, see how fucking. This is what I mean. This is one of the things that got on my nerves because it's like this is such a
She also gets with Lamrak. Seriously, bro?
yes, exactly. It's like, could you not have written that in like your cuck fantasy right now? Like, oh my god.
What sort of noble, virtuous hero lays with Lamrak and has sex with Lamrak? This is pathetic. This isn't what heroes do. You know what heroes do? They're like Marocot. Marocot is an actual perfect, excellent example of what a virtuous hero is. I don't care that he murders people. He murders the people that need to be murdered. That's it. I'll defend Marocot as a heroic figure until I die.
Yes, exactly. He is. Like, oh my god, the difference there. And the worst part is that the story like just hypes her up and everything like that. Shauna is such a fucking annoying element of the story because it's clear that Stover just didn't get marriage therapy like he wanted. So now it's just like I love her still, even despite all the arguing. I mean, it's just like we don't. It's hard to buy into their love story, which is like an important thing for the first two books.
It's just never developed.
Yeah, it's never developed properly. It like even in like the fucking and by the time of the third and fourth book, it doesn't even matter anymore. It legitimately like hardly ever matters beyond like a
Yeah, and then Palace Rio just randomly appears at the end for the happy reunion. Why? Why is she there? For what reason? She literally became a piece of shit asshole in the second book, and then an even bigger piece of shit of an asshole when she became a goddess. Why is she returning in the character meetup at the end? She doesn't deserve this. Come on, Stower. Please, I know you're a great writer, but I don't believe you succeeded with Chana. I just don't.
I know, it's so frustrating. It's just she's such an annoying element of the series, and I just can't stand her. The only saving grace for her is that she's hot. That's it. That's all she gets.
That's always the saving grace. I mean, come on.
Oh my god. Anyways, that's the sort of the side plot for Caine is that he got cucked.
Oh, and I just want to mention, so that people don't get this wrong. It's not that Stover can't write women. He actually has an amazing women characters here. Like some of the most entertaining female characters, actually. It's just that with Shana, he sort of flopped, and I'm not sure why. I really hope it's not what AJP is implying here, that he's somehow projecting his sex wife fantasies or something. That would be really sad. But I'll just leave it at my opinion is that he just failed with this particular character. For example, the other female character in the Heroes Die, I forget her name, but she was this extremely skilled fighter. She's a great character. She's amazing. So yeah.
Oh yeah, and also the Horse Witch. The Horse Witch is also a pretty great character as well. I really like her.
Oh yeah, she's also easily the most interesting one.
Yeah, definitely no problem there. So with Heroes Die already, we have a traditional work that has some issues with its traditional foundations. But what makes it interesting is definitely when Stover is able to go experimental. When Stover goes experimental and weird, like he wants to be, it definitely stands out a lot more. But that's going to be honestly the folly with Heroes Die. It reads pretty much like a movie script from beginning to end. There's some great prose, some great direction, some great writing, and some great storyboarding elements there, I would definitely say. The action, that's one thing we got to definitely talk about. Stover has a great action. He's very kinetic, very fluid, very like nonstop movement. Like it's so good. And like it's been an inspiration for my type of action writing recently. And something I've been trying to copy and mimic a whole lot. However, I will say as well that sometimes it feels like the action is a bit of an unnecessary thing at times, but this is a sort of sorcery work. Like, what can you do, really? Like, action's supposed to be expected, especially in an assassination plot against Malekov and everything like that.
Well, yeah, I think the action could be a blade with two. No, oh wait, a sword with two blades, a knife with two blades, whatever the fight was. A double-edged sword. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm retarded. It's a double-edged sword. So if you really like action and you like reading action, because reading action and watching action are two very different things. But if you enjoy reading action, I think Heroes Die would be your jam. It just stuck filled with non-stop action from the first page to the last page. It's just a never-ending combustion of explosions, of lasers, of everything you can imagine to be cool if you are like a 17-year-old edgy teenager. It's there, bro. It's the most 90s book ever. It literally has all the stereotypes and twists them a bit. So it's a bit like what Erickson believes Gardens of the Moon is, like taking all the main themes of the genre at the time and twisting them. The difference, of course, being that Erickson is delusional and Gardens of the Moon is completely unique and has nothing to do with anything else in the genre. While Heroes Die is actually just taking all the basic stereotypes. Stoller somehow manages to fill his books with so much shit. I have no idea how he does it. His skills at compacting million different details and somehow making the book fast paced from start to finish with all the books is genuinely crazy. Crazy. I don't know how he does it. The only other author I know who does something similar with a similar set of skills is Zelazny. But Stoller is better, I believe, in my opinion. So you have in the first book, only the first book, and the others get crazier. In the first book, you have a cataclysmic war between two separate dimensions, parallel dimensions, or separate worlds, which are connected with bullshit future technology. And you have on the one side, it's this fantasy medieval, very standard lore with all the elves and dwarfs and orcs and what have you. And on the other side, you have Earth in the future turned into a dystopia. So it's cliches everywhere. And the dystopia is basically pretty much out of Brave New World, even though it's a bit worse. It's like from Black Mirror. So there's a secret elite that controls all access to technology, all access to knowledge, all access to information, really. And they are supreme dictators, so much that nobody knows who they are. They just know their name. Which, I mean, I don't know if someone knows Chinese shit, but this is pretty much the ideal government for the legalists. This is what Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, attempted to do, to be such a figure of absolute power that nobody knows where he is at all times. And that's what gives him absolute power. This is pretty much what the board of governors are. Some basically omnipotent autocrats whose will is law, and they control everything by controlling technology. And it's basically a totalitarian dystopia where 1% of the population is living lives of unlimited luxury, and 99% is living in abject poverty. Basically, our world in like a century. But and that's only the background details. I haven't even started with the plot. That's how much stuff Stoller is able to fill in a single book, and it generally amazes me. And the other thing is that the plot itself is also stacked with fucking so much shit. Yes, it's traditional. Yes, it's standard. Yes, it even has a ticking time bomb as a main plot device, which is stupid. I hate it. I fucking hate this. But I mean, it's there. It's another cliche. And Stoller, to give him credit, he uses cliches, but he uses them masterfully. He can include them with such skill into the story that it blends perfectly both with the way he has decided to write the story and the way the fictional setting works. The same with the soliloquies of the actors who need them to talk to themselves in their head so that the audience back on Earth can hear them. I mean, this is the perfect excuse to use first-person narrative. And the story devices, the stories actors play, I mean, that's the perfect ploy to write a book. So, I mean, it's crazy how much shit there is in this book. And Heroes Dice is the most simple book, the simplest one. The others are insane. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention, I forgot where I started from, and I have severe lack of short-term memory, so I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, no problem. And that's also another factor we need to talk about as well, because I haven't mentioned him yet. Burn, everyone's favorite necrophiliac, like homosexual. I have no idea what the fuck Silver was on when he was writing this character.
He's just French.
He's just French. Burns a fun character. He's a psychopath, and he wants to really kill Caine and fuck his body. That's literally Burns' whole motivation. Besides, like, he respects and idolizes Malakoff quite a bit, and actually thinks he has a point with his whole worldview and perspective. And with Byrne, he's the only character to have devastatingly wounded Caine during what happened in the third book. Yeah, the third book is a prequel slash sequel type of situation there because of his shenanigans.
It's
And
weird.
it's very weird. Uh, and Byrne basically in their has like one of the coolest final fights I've seen in a good bit. Their final duel was pretty fucking awesome. And through that, Caine gets crippled after he rescues Shauna and he fails to rescue Lamorak. And basically, he finds out that Shauna's pregnant and everything like that. And they have this weird thing where they realize they're not going to really have a happy ending. Kohlberg gets arrested because of something. I forget what it was, but Caine did something that resulted in Kohlberg being arrested and everything like that.
By the way, fuck Kohlberg. That's
Yeah.
it.
Kohlberg is a shitty person, but he's a really well-written shitty person. I'll give Stover that. He's a
Oh yeah.
very shithead. And basically, what we get from there is Milkov gets defeated, but not really. He gets some of his power lost through something called a Batman move from Caine, which was pretty cool. This is where like the cheesiness actually comes in, and I think the cheesiness actually serves to make the story like that much more fun. Is just like the Batman Gambit scene, like this epic action scale being reduced towards like this scene from a comic book. It's like, okay, Stover, I get you. It's very Michael Moorcock-esque when it came to how it's being presented, and I
Kane
appreciate
also
it.
kicks Malcott in the balls,
Yes,
which was
Kane
funny.
kicks Malakoff in the balls, which is fucking hilarious. And basically, the book ends with a pretty open-ended loop. And I know we don't really go into detail here. That's because I'm gonna be frank. This is the kind of book where you have to kind of read it. Yeah, that's what I think. Really, like we can discuss our philosophies and our etiquettes here, but definitely give Caine a read and see for yourself how it goes. Because there's a lot of interesting stuff there, even despite its follies and everything like that. And now we move to the second best book. The second best, probably, if not the best, Blade of Tyshell, which I think is a book I've grown to appreciate more over time.
First time I read Blade of the Shell, I was genuinely mind blown, which happens very rarely with me. I guess I'm just difficult to impress. But this book is just you heard me explain just the basic background details of the first book and how stacked up it is. And now imagine this to a level 9,000, and this is basically Blade of Tyshell. And not even this, I am absolutely certain that Stover improves thousandfold in terms of prose, in terms of voice, in terms of setting, impact, characters, pretty much everything. This book is just bonkers, and it's extremely different from Heroes Die. I don't even. It's sequel only temporally. It's sequel because it happens after Heroes Die, but it has nothing to do with almost nothing to do with the topics discussed in Heroes Die. It's it's much more of a slow burn, but once it starts to burn, it will scorch you, and it's also much more introspective, much more thoughtful, much more drawn out, and even I'd say deep, obviously. And also, usually Stoller has the a weird ability that his first book is a banger, and his second book is an atom bomb. This applies the same here. The conclusion is absolutely fucking insane. It compares with Steven Erickson easily. It's uh, it's bonkers, and that's my goofy ass appreciation for it. There's also very complex philosophical problems discussed in the book, very complex PTSD and trauma exploration, extremely dark shit, disturbing shit, and shit that I know has put people off the series who, for example, have liked Heroes Die and expected something similar, and they've got the fucking nuclear punch of Blade of Tyshell and got disgusted, specifically by Kobach in this book. Kobach is I don't even want to defend him, He's well written in terms of that he's absolutely disgusting, but I don't think it was necessary to be that disgusting, honestly, for the story. It's a very tricky thing to explore. I respect that Stover had the balls to attempt something as fucked up as Callback, but come on, man. did you did you did you have to rape Fate? Come on.
I know that was like Jesus, like what the fuck is happening here, Stover? Like, I get we needed to hate the shit out of Kohlberg so it would make it feel that much better when he got his ass kicked and everything like that. But
By the
my,
mother of Lamorak, which is hilarious.
it's like my goodness, like damn. Definitely, that's the thing. I've grown to appreciate this book more as I gone along. When I read it the first time around, it made me like get turned off from it. I could not stand Caine's one-liners in this. I could not stand Shauna in this. I could not stand a lot of things in this. However, as I grew, I realized what this book's intention was, which was deconstruction. It was about deconstruct, like in the vein of Deleuze, Deleuze's deconstruction. It was really breaking down the spirit of these characters and analyzing them and ruining them, basically, because Malkoff isn't Malkoff anymore. He's Tenelkoff. And now he has his whole personality and power, and he's questioning himself and his weakness and his abilities. You have Shauna questioning her station as a mother, as a wife, as a person versus being a goddess, and her duties as a hero. You have Caine and basically Hari and his duality there, which is always going to be overarching with the series. And one of the more interesting ones is Wraith and the Caine Slayer persona. Now,
Fantastic character.
yes. Okay, I've grown to like Wraith so much more as I grew. And I have to say, as I told my good friend Narceel and QM, his scene where he's beating the shit out of Caine over and over and over again, and you could see the pros, like, you could see his persona breaking apart as he's beating the shit out of Caine and realizing that he's just hitting a normal man and not the mythical figure he always hated in his mind is so fucking good. It's such a great scene, and I think it's one of the best moments in metafiction in presentation of narrative, like of prose and paragraph spacing and everything like that. It's such a fucking great scene. And the whole overarching thing about this book being about egos and our dualities and our personas and our masks and who we are as people, like Kohlberg versus him being a shitty person versus this demonic urges he has beneath him. It's all about duality. It's all about our real selves. And Caine, he's a broken man now. He's truly been a broken man, and this story is really presenting that. And it's funny to say Caine because it's not really Hari, it's Caine. Caine's breaking apart. Caine is the one losing everything. Caine is breaking everything down. It's such a good and well written theme in the story. I just couldn't believe that like I didn't see it the first time around. And it's such a beautiful connection with the Jungian elements within the fourth book, Caine's Law, and how that develops, and how the nature of consciousness develops, and how our beings are. It's so fucking good, and I can't believe it's wasted on a series like this, sadly, but it's so good, and I'm gonna praise it where it's due and deserved.
Yeah. So Bev Trashell is less of a sequel and more of a murderer of Heroes Die. Uh, everything. I think one of the main intentions of the book was to prove that happy endings are bullshit, and so generally endings at all, some sort of culmination of events, are bullshit. Time moves on, and everything we have done has consequences, even after we think these consequences have come. So yeah, this book basically breaks down mentally and physically, in some cases, all the characters we've come to know, and also introduces some new, really interesting ones. It's also philosophically a sort of the other side of the coin from heroes die. If Heroes Die was all about violence and commentary on violence, and also straight up will to power as expressed in Mario Kart, Blade of the Shadow turns into, well, sure, you are violent, you've accomplished everything you have wanted to accomplish via violence, and now what? And starts to explore, I think, very competently with the first chapters having to deal with Caine, who's now basically a cripple, the both trauma and PTSD, and it does it fantastically. It's one of the few pieces of fiction that have made me actually feel bad about cripples. I usually don't feel bad about them at all, but it was genuinely hard to read at points. I always sort of want to skip the parts where the book gets really disturbing. But then again, I think the payoff of Blade of the Shadow, after this breaking down of characters, after this utter destruction of what was conceived to be a happy end, you get right at the middle of the book one section when Caine is basically locked up in this inescapable prison, in the deepest part of this prison, in some utterly dark cesspool beneath the prison, in like the toilet, basically in hell. And in this moment, you have this. He has this realization, this epiphany about himself, about the world, about who he is, where he is, and what he wants. And it's one of the most cathartic moments in the entire series, and basically begins this Nietzschean strain of the series about embracing life with all of its horrors. So, and after this pivotal scene where Caine realizes that actually we the people are responsible for what he is. We the readers of the book, the experiencers of his story. It's a kind of neat metafictional element. And from then, right to the end of the book, after you've been punched in the face 50 million times, kicked in the nuts 100 million times by Solar, you get some of the most bullshit, awesome shit if I've ever read. And also, when you mentioned the development of Mario Kart, in the first book, we see Mario Kart basically as this divine, perfected figure of human will, of human power. He's basically the embodiment of power. And now in this book, he's stripped of all this. He's transported to Earth, which to him is basically a hell, and he pretty much right compared to where he comes from. And he has to deal with the fact that he isn't limitless anymore. I believe what Daniel Cott meant. I was limitless, but now I'm not. And I believe his arc is even more interesting than Caine. And I sort of one of my biggest gripes with the series as a whole is that we don't get more Mario Kart after this book. But right here, when he has to struggle with himself to accomplish his return to his homeworld, where he has to do some fucking disgusting shit in service to the Board of Governors in Coburg in order to orchestrate the events of the book. And there's this really amazing fucking chapter when we get into Mario Kart's head. And since he has this thing about him that he's basically a schizophrenic with multiple personalities inside of him, his original person, the ugly ass, weak, skinny necromancer who is now remained in his head as an aspect of him, actually goes against the will of Mario Kart. He splits off from the person, and seeing that he has become disgusting, basically, willing to sexually assault a child so that he can accomplish. So that he basically the complete opposite of Mario Kart from the beginning, and his original personality splits off and makes him stop do it. I think that's a very interesting scene that made Mario Kart an even more interesting character who wasn't just basically a poster child for GigaChat memes. He actually became a very complex, very complicated character, very introspective. He one of my favorite parts of the books is when he doubles with Duncan, with Harry's father, who is also an amazing character, and he sort of trolls him all the time. Duncan argues that we're meant to be free. We're meant to live in freedom, and we don't deserve to live under autocratic regimes. And Marcotte is basically, yeah, no. The body has a head. The sheep have shepherds, and some people just deserve to be slaves. And the dude is just a troll. And on the other hand, he is very charismatic, even while he is stripped away from his previous demure. And yeah, just Tanner Cott is an amazing character, which who again fits into this scheme of Blade of the Shell, which is utter deconstruction and then reconstruction of the character back together, completely changed, which happens at the conclusion when Mark becomes a god.
The reconstruction is definitely the important aspect there, how it builds them back up. Essentially, the only characters that don't are ones who just fail to actualize themselves. Essentially, like Kohlberg doesn't fail it completely.
Yeah,
like,
he just becomes a slave.
Yeah, to his baser urges. He's just a fucking maniac monster, and he has no fucking sense of self there at all. And then you got like, would you say Shauna failed because she kind of gave up her identity a little bit?
Yeah, he just becomes a like the river goddess Chambayam or whatever, and he just becomes a very boring character. He becomes forgettable after book one. No, after the introduction of book two, where she's insufferable, she then becomes a goddess and becomes forgettable.
Yeah, because she fails. She fails because she doesn't actualize with that personality and her flaws and everything like that. She becomes,
and she basically gets molded inside Marcotte's divinity later on.
Yeah, and that's why Malkoff can become a god, like basically. And that's I know we're spoiling that shit already, but who the fuck cares? Malkoff does become a god, and it's like he doesn't lose who he is fundamentally. Like he is able to become something greater and more while still retaining a lot of like his lesser aspects, even though those aspects aren't really lesser. They're just a part of him. And I think that's the major thing as well. Like, it's not that these eyes are worse or that these personas are worse or that anything about these are worse. It's they're a part of our characters. They're a part of who they are. These are, yeah, we call them flaws, but that's what they are. And we have to reconstruct ourselves slowly but surely and everything like that. That's the nature of deconstruction by Deleuze that I think Stover is incorporating there. And I find to be very interesting and very well done.
Yeah, and as the horse witch says, forgiveness and permission. Forgive who you are and accept who you are and be who you are. That's basically the main, I think, is the main point of the entire books, with the caveat that who you are isn't some static identity. The I, as viscerally shown in Blade of the Shell, this identity gets demolished, and then if you fail to rebuild it again, you basically lose yourself and die.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that kind of leads into, that's why I think the third book, why it became kind of like a prequel sequel, is because it's about that nature of time and linearity and the Jungian greater consciousness. And it's about really like going back to your roots and your thing that makes you most traumatic wise. You could say with the character of Hari, his major trauma was his father and everything he went through with his father and his mother and everything like that. For Caine, it was becoming Caine Black Knife, which is what the name of the third book is, Black Knife, and everything he has was the trauma there. And that's sort of like what's identifying there. Like these personas have different points of trauma and different points of excess there. And that's why we're going back in time to confront that a little bit more. Because while Caine reconstructed himself in book 2, he still has a lot of character growth to go before he becomes, what he is in books 3 and 4.
And also, book 3 does this very interesting divide between some random flashbacks that don't really make sense in the story as you read it. But then once you reach the fourth book, it becomes a very obvious why they were put. But I think the main reason why Story divided book 3 in like two separate parallel storylines is to show how much the original Caine from Caine, Return of the Baudeccan, when he basically genocides a bunch of subhuman, sadistic orcs. How much that Caine isn't the same Caine form that we actually follow in the future plotline in Caine Black Knife. And the reason why these Caines are so different is because of Blade of Taishel. And you actually need to you need to suffer through Blade of Taishel to actually appreciate the vast difference between the evolution of a character that has been shown in Caine Black Knife. And it's a very interesting narrative device as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. And unfortunately, I don't really have much to say on Caine Black Knife. I thought it was a fine book. I thought it had some interesting uses of second person, of representing that dehumanization process going on there, and the whole of the grandiosity. I like Orbeck a lot. Orbeck is a bro. I really fucking like his character.
Orbeck is a child.
Yeah, he's such a fun character. And it's also,
I'd say that Caine Black Knife is probably the most entertaining, at least for me, of the books. It's sort of the candy you receive after the beating of Blade of Taishel. It's very carefree. Caine just wanders around and does whatever the fuck, and just trolls random people for the vast majority of the book. And it's kind of just a fun book. I don't know. It was a very fun experience to me. It's my most favorite book to reread because it has some very well done subtle foreshadowing. So yeah, it also for the first time we see this as a second person narrative, which becomes one of the first weird instances that we get in book 4. It also introduces briefly as a foreshadowing that we'll be dealing with gods in the next book, which the next book is my favorite book from the series. And I think it's the most ambitious thing that has been done in the genre, and unfortunately it fails. But it's still it's absolutely it's a gobsmack. I love it.
Oh, I'm interested in hearing that, like why you think book 4 fails. But with book 3, this is where we got introduced to the God Butcher. And the God Butcher and the Sword of Man. And that's like, holy fucking shit, that shit's awesome as hell. But the gods really do just kind of come out of nowhere. It's not like, I know you don't talk us, but it's not like this TSA where we had kind of an implication slowly over time that the gods were more active than we would like to admit. Like there was really not that much of a mention of the gods before, like.
Yeah, that's really my main issue with the series, is that a bunch of shit is brought up in the next books, which has zero foreshadowing in the like. Where the fuck does the blind god come from? We have sorry, we have zero implications in Heroes Die that there is this esoteric, invisible deity that's transmitted to black oil that you inject in your blood, and everybody from the elite has it, and it's like this impersonal force of consumption. What it just appears out of nowhere, and the same happens with all this fucking time travel, godly metaphysics, weird ass Jungian bullshit that happens in the 4th book. It's just out of nowhere. That's why I didn't dare to call this a series. It's more like a link of short stories that have reoccurring characters.
Yeah, so I would definitely say that's kind of been that it is definitely an issue of the later parts of Caine. It's just like how stuff gets brought up and kind of out of nowhere. Is that why you think book 4 failed, or would you say it's because of some other element? Would you say it's because of how the time travel's handled? Would you say?
I just say that the second half, and not the second half, but like the last 100 pages make zero sense. I've reread them maybe 4 times at this point, and I still have no idea what's going on. I've figured out the other 300 pages, and I know the basics. I know how the plot develops, and it's amazing. But the finale makes no sense. It's awesome, but makes no sense. I think it fails. It fails as a plotting book 4. Otherwise, it's amazing. It has some of the most. I think there's this chapter called "Reasons for Peasants." Every time I read it, it brings me to tears. It's just amazing character moments. But yeah, I think book 4 fails first. As its plot makes no sense. Not the entire plot, but the end. I think it wasn't developed properly. should have had at least 100 more pages. And then it has a very weak setting. Weak in the sense that there's some parts of the book that you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea where you are, who's there, because the description is lacking. The book is mostly dialogue, and this for me, I've always hated dialogue-heavy books. This one is an exception because it's just so cool, but I think the setting still suffers, and there's a lot of places, a lot of these events that happen that are extremely vague and unclear. But other than that, it's one of the most big balls books I've seen.
Okay, yeah. I can appreciate that, yeah. And a lot of the Jungian unconsciousness gets kind of out there, but it's like it's such a big and ballsy move. I kind of respect it a little bit to go that far. However, again, I don't really have many thoughts on this book because I'm gonna be frank here. I have no idea what was happening for most of the fucking book. I have no idea what was going on with all this time travel and most of like, and those last 100 pages. I appreciated the last Caine and Malikov talk. I think that was a very beautiful moment.
Yeah, but we really needed it. I really needed more Malikov, and we didn't get it.
Yeah, and that's an unfortunate shame. But yeah, I think that I would say would be our overall thoughts on the series. Shulgi, what would you say after discussing it a bit more? Would you say you appreciate the series a bit more? Would you say you love it a bit more? Or would you say it's kind of like you're recognizing a bit more of its flaws? Because for me, I definitely realized I appreciate this series a lot more than I thought I did. Even with my gripes about it as still as an author and everything along those lines.
Well, when I first read it, I was basically heads over heels with it because it just, as I said in the beginning, it was everything I like stuffed in one place. But as I reread it and as I've come to think more about it and as I've come to read more stuff, I've become more critical of Caine, mostly because,
well, as always, nothing is perfect. But also, as we discussed in this talk, there are some things I really didn't think worked out. As you said, for most of Caine's War, excuse me, you have no idea what's going on unless you follow really closely. And even then, I believe the ending still makes no sense. And it's basically just a Deus Ex Machina, even though the Deus Ex Machina is plot include and makes sense to be there since we are playing with gods, but still. And I also believe that it's way too self-insisting to stick with the meme. It insists upon itself. But other than that, I've become more critical of the series, but it's still in my mouth there's more fantasy, and the others being, of course, Malazan and Melissa McPhail's Spartacus Light and Shadow, and then Gormenghast. And I think those are the best works of fantasy I've seen.
Yay, Melissa McPhail introduction. We should talk about her sometime in the future.
Yeah. I'm like in the fourth book, 1,000 pages into it. So maybe after I'm done with it, we should talk about it.
Yeah, when you're done.
Since Bjorn van Gorderen is the most ludicrous gearchat I've ever seen. He's like the perfect satire of planners, of schemers. He's like a different version of Calambet from the Malazan books, and I fucking love him. The schemer prototype is my favorite character prototype by far, and he's done wonderfully.
Yes, he is. I love him to death, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. We are gonna also talk about the future Caine books that are gonna be coming out, the sequel series about Faith, and we intend to discuss those when they do come out. And
I will also. Sorry, keep on.
Go ahead. You can talk.
I will also, since I've been planning it for a while, I will do a proper deep dive of Caine at some point, which I may publish in my own channel. But yeah, we're just grazing the surface here. Trust me, guys, these books have some serious depth to it. Story really tries to do more with the genre, and I respect that.
Yeah, definitely. So then, guys, this is AJP and Shulgi. We're gonna be signing out now. Thank you guys so much, and we hope you give Caine a read so we can discuss it with you guys. And we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you all so much. You have a good one. AJP, signing out.